2, 1. Oh, it's a book about Benjamin Zephaniah. Um, oh, it's by Werner Wilkins. So, hello, my name's Tim. Welcome to my channel. Hopefully, if I'm good at editing, I would have put the bit of me opening my first mystery book of the month here. If I'm not, then this is me introducing the challenge of me doing a mystery book. So every month I will open up a book that my wife has collated and wrapped up for me like a gift. And January's month mystery book was Benjamin Zephaniah by Werner Wilkins. This is part of the Black Stars series, published by Scholastic, I think. And my wife wrote, "R.I.P. to this legend. Hope you haven't read it." And I haven't read it yet. But now I have, and I'm going to talk to you about it. So Benjamin Zephaniah was a poet. He was born in Birmingham, and I found him when I discovered him when I was at school. We had a school conference to go when I was doing my GCSE English. I was 15, and we went, and part of it is you had an anthology of poetry, and he wasn't one of the poets I was studying, but he was there because lots of people study different poets, and the way he spoke, the way he performed, he had a natural wisdom to him and a charisma. He was a performer, and also his poetry itself was brilliant. And then I've kind of followed him throughout my life. Someone to, whenever I see him on TV, I always pay attention. He was very passionate about lots of causes, and did a lot for the community and for humanity as a whole. And then last year he had a brain tumour, I think it was, and I think it was 8 weeks between diagnosis and him passing away, unfortunately. And this, I knew that he had a rough childhood. He talked about his rough childhood. I knew that he was the only black boy in his school growing up. And I knew that he had spent some time in prison because he was angry with the world. I did not know just how hard his life was growing up. So he was born, as almost all people are, but he was one of twins, and his parents were constantly arguing and fighting, and he had a younger twin sister, and in the end, I think he had, yeah, so his parents had another set of twins and 4 more children. So there were 8 children in this house, in this 2 up, 2 bed, 2 up, 2 down house in Birmingham. And there was domestic abuse from his father, both on him and his mum. And then one day his father went to work, and his mum took him and said, "We're getting out of here. Pack a bag. We're going." And she ran with him. They ran away from his family, not just from his abusive dad, but from his 7 brothers and sisters, from his twin sister, and they just had to go and try and find somewhere to live. And eventually, a charitable Pakistani family let them rent a room, and then from there he had to move to a new school, and then his father found him, and they had to keep moving. They were constantly escaping, and it was rough. It was rough to read. I can imagine how much harder it would have been to live. But one thing of him moving school every few weeks, he was really not in one place very long, was that he, for being a poet, for being a wordsmith, for being a performer, he didn't know how to read or write, not effectively anyway. And it was only until he was an adult and had come out of prison that he signed up for adult reading and writing classes. He was obviously very smart. He had the ability to memorize things very well. He would come up with poems and keep them in his head because he did not know how to put them down. but he was talking about how he went to church and would be able to rattle off what the priest said. He could memorize it and parrot it back. He had a very, very strong memory, but he had no skills. He couldn't show that because he couldn't read or write. And how he kind of got in with the wrong crowd and ended up in court, and he ended up in there was a bad fight, and he ended up in prison because he was angry at the world, and the world had abandoned him. And that the thing that this book, Verna Wilkins, the author, brings up isn't just the impact on him, but the impact on his mum. And it was about how he saw the impact that he was having on his mum. Incredibly brave woman. And then talks about how he started performing. He was performing poetry once, and the local vicar saw him do this, and he was like, "Oh no, I just did a funny poem about a silly vicar. My mum's going to be really upset with me." And his vicar recommended that he entered a poetry competition, and he won it. And you can see why he won it, because there's a few poems in here, and they're all like, you can spot a Benjamin Zephaniah poem from a mile away, because they have a rhythm to them and they bounce, and you can only say them in his voice. Whenever you read them, you hear his voice. You hear him talking to you in his sing-song voice, with his syncopated rhythm of talking and his very strange Birmingham Jamaican accent. And you read the poems and you hear his voice, and then you feel really sad that he is no longer in this world. I miss him, and this makes me miss him more. So, thank you. My wife put this in for the mystery of the mystery collection, the mystery challenge, and I'm really glad I read this. I feel quite emotional, because I think the world is definitely not as bright, not as funny, not as whimsical, and not as wise with him not in it. Yeah. In terms of rating, it's a 5-star read. It's very short. It's less than 50 pages. But I as someone who was a fan of him, I learned a lot. And actually, my kids, they've got Yoto players, and he's got a poetry collection called like Talking Turkeys, I think it is. And my son listens to that all the time. Yeah, because the poems are just really short and sharp, and he finds them really funny, and that makes me happy, because even though he is not in this world anymore, that recording of his voice is, and his poetry still is, and you can't read his poetry, even just to yourself, let alone speaking out loud. You can't read it without hearing him say it. So, is he really gone? Is he really gone? We'll find out. Anyway, that's the first of my mystery challenge books. Let's see what the future holds. All right. Bye.